All right, so I have with me Eric Salzman, is that right?
Yep.
And Zac Schwartz
Mhm.
and Ray Arrastia, right? And in no particular order, or maybe in reverse order, Battletech line developer and Battletech fact checker and shrapnel writer and Battletech fact check lead and author. Did I get all that right?
Yep.
All right. So thanks for being here, gentlemen. It seems that we are all bound together by love of Battletech.
Mhm.
So let's just start by saying what got each of you into Battletech. What were your earliest memories of Battletech?
So I got for my birthday one year a stack of video games, which included the Amiga version of Crescent Hawk's Inception, and plugged that in, started
Amiga.
running on it.
That's-
Yeah, and, the other one stayed sitting there dusty, not terribly heavily played, and I just played the hell out of that thing.
Mm.
And then you find a secret room and you send off a card. And then you notice that you forgot to send the money with it, so you send off another envelope really quickly, and a few weeks later, a miniature shows up, and it's like, ooh, is a game associated with this beyond this? Cool.
Hmm.
So that's really how my first introduction to it.
What an introduction. How about you, Zach?
Well, when I was a kid, my dad got a desktop computer that came with a copy of MechWarrior 2. I played that a bunch, and this was back in the day when computer game manuals had all kinds of like cool fluff in them and stuff.
Hmm.
So I was flipping through that, and on the very back page there was an advertisement for the Battletech 4th Edition box set. So I convinced my dad to let me go on eBay with his card, and I scored a copy of that for like $8. And I've just been addicted to it ever since. Went to the local Barnes and Noble, picked up copies of the two clan field manuals and TROs 3058 and 3060, and just became obsessed. And ever since then, it's been a almost heroin-like addiction for me.
Right on. I don't mean to encourage heroin use, but if it's Battletech, then it's all right. How about you, Ray?
A friend introduced me to it in high school, and the very first game we set up, he actually set it up lopsided in his favor. But I ran up to his heavy mech in a light mech. He was in a trench, and I pulled off a kick that kicked his head in, and that hooked me instantly. That was just an amazing first experience. And I immediately dived into the lore behind the game, and I was hooked ever since then.
Hmm. So for people who might not be into Battletech, if there are certain people out there still not aware of Battletech or into Battletech, describe Battletech in a very short couple sentences. What about Battletech is going to get somebody into it that has never heard of it?
Well, it seems like that's two different questions. How would you sell someone on BattleTech, or how would you describe it?
Do both.
Because
We've got an hour.
Because what grabs me is that it is a reimagining of classical history as seen through the lens of the future of the 1980s
Right.
with giant robots.
Hmm.
Um,
So this is what the 1980s thought the future would look like, and let's tell some earlier history through that lens.
cassette futurism is the genre. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy mashup of all sorts of. It's like, and what if the British Empire and the Imperial China and Imperial Japan and the German Empire and the Mongol hordes and the Iberian Peninsula and the Old West in space and the Roman Empire in space all sort of showed up with more or less equivalent technology and just started beating the hell out of each other. So you get
Very
this,
convenient.
this crazy pastiche of all sorts of different, reimagined people cosplaying as historical empires, but with incredibly well developed lore and details on the planets. The setting is just amazingly built out, and every new product that comes out has more and more details, more political intrigue, really well developed characters. And so it's really not just the setting, but it's a great playground for all of this great political intrigue and dynastic drama and the rest of it. So the robots are they're on the cover, but really there's a hugely epic story unfolding throughout all of the novels, all of the short stories, all of the old source books. I mean, you look back at the original things that launched this, the house source books, and they are just so packed with plot hooks that anybody who wants to run an adventure can find something really cool to latch onto and build out.
I mean, honestly, these days, if people ask me, I just tell them it's Game of Thrones in space, but with walking tanks.
Sure. I've also been told that there are miniatures.
Yes.
That you can actually play a game in this world, right? And Battletech is really blown up.
Doing part to the miniature line.
Yeah.
In fact, we've given it a modern makeover, and we've had a couple successful Kickstarters now introducing the miniatures. But the gameplay is solid, and the gameplay has not changed much in decades.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we've got the nice eye candy to bring people in and they're discovering the game, we've got a whole new audience, as well as people coming back that have sort of migrated away over the years.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Just over at Hall A, where I was playing this afternoon, we had people walk up and say, "Oh yeah, so I haven't played for 20 yeyears," but then within 5 minutes they're rolling dice and blowing up the Star League mechs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I remember because I've done more Shadowrun writing and been in more in that world, and I remember, gosh, maybe 7-10 years ago, it seemed like Battletech was sort of at a lull, right? And there weren't as many people attending the events and things. I thought, man, I wonder what's going on. But the people that I knew, like I'm from North Texas, and North Texas has a huge Battletech community. And what I realized about the folks who played Battletech is, yes, they love the game, but also they were just incredibly passionate about the lore, like OCD, like incredibly stringent about the lore, right? So what is it about Battletech's lore? I mean, because you've got this minis game, right? The minis game is the thing, ostensibly, right? That's sort of the hook. But what is it about Battletech's lore that really makes people really passionate about it?
In my opinion, it's the immersion.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it was originally presented, and the lead that we followed, is that it's presented as future history,
Mm-hmm.
fait accompli, and that lets it feels real to people because of that. The way that it's presented.
Mm-hmm.
That's what did it for me.
Yeah.
That's what hooked me.
And Battletech source books are more or less in universe, right?
Again, yes.
Yeah. That's a really cool way to present a source book.
Yeah, they're the compilations of reports, news articles, and they can be of varying levels of reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the novels, that's a different level of canonicity. That's that's showing you what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you can have a report in the source book potentially being wrong, so that if you come up with a more interesting way for the story direction to go, you can go back and say, well, okay, that was what this was reported back in
Propaganda.
3067,
Or, yeah.
but actually, this is what really happened, and then you can go with what we don't do a lot of retcons, but we can do reinterpretations of what actually happened.
Sure. Yeah.
If I may say, as somebody who I think came into the universe in a somewhat unorthodox way, in that I sort of came into it through the source books rather than the novels, I think one of its strengths is that, as much as it also has very sort of fun and dynamic individual characters, I think what's really cool about it is that it also has these very storied units themselves, from individual companies all the way up to entire regiments and everything in between, that themselves are almost like characters in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who have never read a novel, but who passionately follow some particular regiment of the Crucis Lancers, or the Merrick Militia, or the Sword of Light, and those are just as real of characters to them as Victor Steiner Davian, or Sun Tzu Lao, or what have you.
So, Ray, I know what a line developer is, but in your words, what do you do as a Battletech line developer?
I direct the product line and the storyline. I plan things out over the next few years where we're going to go in terms of both
The miniatures game.
the miniatures game as well as the storyline, and work with both our fiction authors and our rules authors to create those products.
Right on. Now, a little bit more unorthodox
Mm-hmm.
is having an entire role devoted to fact checking, which fascinates me. So, can you guys speak to what you do in your role as I know authors, right? Like, yeah, we're all like authors are great, but I have very rarely encountered somebody who says, "This is my primary thing. I'm a fact checker." I'm fascinated in that. So, what are y'all doing, and why are you doing it?
All right, so I mean, BattleTech keeps on coming out with lots of highly detailed pieces of lore, and especially back before everything got digitized and searchable, it's unreasonable to expect a new author to be handed an assignment. Here, we need 300 pages on this one character's epic journey along these two planets fighting here. Read these 600 books,
Right.
So basically, Catalyst is hiring good authors who are able to come out with great stories, with epic characters, with good, dynamics, and they get some basic background information about the setting, and they try as the best they can to keep it, within the lore. But they'd have to spend, years researching to make it fully immersive. So once they finished with their draft, we get the fact check team, who is a great bunch of great group of people, comes to us and we look through it. And we happen to have the entire library of everything that's come out for BattleTech digitized on a shared drive. And of course, all of our people are either self-selected or selected having encyclopedic knowledge about various aspects of the universe. And so we read through it, and when that's a specific detail there I'm not totally sure about, let's check it. And then we have the ability to, go into our share drive, run the keyword searches, figure out, okay, what has been said about this, where is what's previously been said matching up with what's here. And if it doesn't match, then we flag that and we provide suggested modifications for this is how you could keep the entire thrust of your story and what you're trying to do with it, and not step on the toes of previous authors and keep it completely aligned. And we have to have a good team about this, because it can't just be one person, because I'm good at certain things, but I will completely miss other references, and we have other people who are fantastic. And so our crew takes about 2 weeks to go through a major source book or novel. We'll go through a short article in about 3 days, and turn around comments and suggested edits back to the developer for that project or the author, and they can then look at it and figure out if what we've suggested matches with what they're trying to accomplish, and we can do any further back and forth as needed.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I think that one of the strengths of the team is like you said, we have folks who have some really impressive specialized knowledge. I know Mike Miller, for example. I don't know what we would do without him. His knowledge of the physics of the setting and the material science and stuff even though obviously we try not to stray into the world of economics, none of us are economists.
Sure.
I am actually.
Okay, one of us is an economist.
That was worth the whole price of the interview right there.
But yeah, I think that we do a good job of sort of keeping everything at a level of verisimilitude
Sure.
that makes it so that you can sort of zoom in on any given aspect of the game, and it will hold up to close examination. Which I think is a real strength that, at least in my opinion, puts it well above almost any other fiction universe.
Sure.
It's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the old saying that Fawcett didn't do fact checking. I mean, with paper copies and other stuff like that, that was impossible for them to do at that level. But that resulted in, one author would say, okay, so there's this planet, it's a hollowed out, moon, and it's got a port at this thing, and everyone lives inside. Okay, great. And then another author comes along, 15 years later, and they write an epic battle on the surface of the same planet, with volcanoes going off and scorpions scuttling across the ground. It's like, but don't the people live in what? And so, because nobody had cross-checked.
Sure.
And so our goal is to basically that breaks immersion if people are familiar with the earlier story.
Yeah.
And there was another case where there's a description of a major battle in a jungle, an equatorial jungle on a planet that another author had described as a barren world lashed by radiation. Everybody lives underground. So it's like, did they fight in the hydroponic gardens? So our goal is essentially to keep that from happening and make sure that if you pick up a book from 20 years ago, you pick up a book from next year, and they're set in the same place, that it's recognizable as the same place, and that everything sort of meshes together without breaking immersion.
That seems like it could be a full-time job, and maybe maybe it is if you haven't spread it out. But I think, Ray, you could probably think of the BattleTech lore in one of two ways. Either this is so huge that it's going to collapse under its own weight one of these days, or that's the selling point, right? It is just this immersive thing that, like, there is no single entry point. Any place you jump in, you're going to find a rabbit hole that just goes on and on and on, and that
We've found that is the selling point.
yeah.
I mean, we do need a balance. Is that there has to be a universal entry point,
Mm-hmm.
but the vastness of the lore, I think, is what keeps people.
Sure.
And the fact check team, the other term used for it is continuity,
Mhm.
and that maintaining that continuity, exactly as Eric said, means that you could go and pick up a novel from 30 years ago, and it should work smoothly with the novel that's just published last month.
And maybe even be relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a bit like, in my mind, Star Wars couldn't handle that, right? Like, the Star Wars team said, I'm sorry, we just can't handle all of these extended universes. We're just gonna cut it, right, and move on. But with BattleTech, you're like, we don't have to do that. We can actually honor what came before,
Yes.
provide new entries, and sort of keep both things. Have your cake and eat it too. But that just seems also really hard.
Yes.
Have you found when new authors come in, do they struggle with that at all?
Yes. Some do, some don't, but generally there is a sort of a learning curve to working within the continuity.
Sure.
It's new author would get the cliff notes and the concept of their story, and they run with it, but it makes all the difference to have fact check involved. And
Yeah.
our process is now, and thanks to Eric and the new team that he's put together, where we try to involve authors early on, before even the draft stage, to ask questions and submit ideas and see where they might need guidance.
Yeah.
Or even references for them to go back and read before they start.
Sure.
So in that sense, we actually sort of serve as a research department.
Mm-hmm. So do you ever have, and feel free to not spill any tea here, but do you ever have an author, submit something and then the fact checkers come back and say, that's not going to work? Do they ever get upset?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not recently,
Sure.
but we've had that happen before, and part of that is the growing pains of developing the fact check team.
Yeah.
As well as the author pool.
That seems like it would be really cool, though, to, I mean, if it's possible, right, to just check your ego at the door and say, hey, I've written this thing. I know ahead of time that I'm stepping into a universe that I don't know everything about. And so if you can just say, I'm fine with getting all this feedback and it's not personal, right, then that seems like it would be really cool for an author to have.
And when we have authors like that, we wind up with really good relationships because of it. And without naming names or anything, but you did say Star Wars. We have some Star Wars authors, and they tend to be the ones that are better to work with.
Oh, okay, because of that sort of dynamic. Yeah. They've worked with the bigger IP, with the big universe, and yeah. Because I can just imagine, I can imagine being an author and being a little bit intimidated by a fact check group. That, you know what I mean? Like, are they going to look at me and think, this guy doesn't know Battletech, right? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and maybe they would be a little bit sensitive to that. But it sounds like you guys expect writers and authors to just not know everything, and your real role is to just come alongside of them, almost like an editor.
Well, I mean, if they knew everything, they'd be on the fact check team, and we
Right.
several members, several people who are prominent writers of shrapnel articles and other things like that are on the fact check team.
Mhm.
And
I know for my own part, I take a great deal of joy in the research process.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite things when I write pieces for Shrapnel is to sit down and just hunt down every last piece of lore that has ever been involved with that thing, build a big research document, and then it's almost like sewing together something that, like, in some ways it's almost like so much of the work has already been done for you, and it's a process of like weaving together the work of all these authors before you into this coherent whole. And I personally take a lot of joy in that part of the process. I find that very pleasurable.
it's not drudge work. For the people who are on the fact check team are there because they find this absolutely marvelous. They get to look at the material early. These are the people who, when a faucet product would come out in the early 90s, and they'd read it and they'd find inconsistencies that go, "Argh!" And now they're in a position
If only
where
somebody
they,
had
if
asked
only
me first.
somebody-
I was that kid. I was that
Yeah.
kid.
So basically, these are all the people who now get a chance to, if only they'd asked me about this, we could have fixed it. And now they're asking.
Yeah, perfect. Eric, you before the interview, you said that you're not just a fact checker, but you've also written some stuff.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, so I have written some entries for the recognition guides. Designed a few mechs that were described as moving war crimes. Check out the linebacker with 20 machine guns. And despite that, they still let me also do some writing for shrapnel articles. I've got one short story in there. And then I've
For
done...
folks who don't know, what's Shrapnel?
Shrapnel is the quarterly magazine that has a mixture of in-universe articles, sort of like mini sourcebook entries and short fiction.
Okay.
And then got one story in there, The Great Urban Mech Uprising.
Cool.
And then I've also been asked to write portions of source books, including Tamar Rising and Ilkhan's Eyes Only, Hotspots, Hinterlands, and some of the Legends books, and of course, my pride and joy, the Clan Spaniel source book.
Cool. Zach, you've also written for Shrapnel, right? Anything?
Yeah, I mostly focus on the Planet Digest and Unit Digest articles. What brought me into the writing side of things initially was I really love writing about planets. I'm a huge history nerd, and I really love sort of trying to analyze the universe from almost like a level of political economy, and sort of looking at it through that lens, and then because there's there's like 1,000 years of fictional history,
Sure.
you get to sort of like build this whole, literal world around, depending on the planet, sometimes there's a ton that's been written about it. Sometimes it's just a name on a map. That's actually, if I may say, one of my favorite things about the setting is that map.
Sure.
You have these planets that the game has focused on for the entire length of its run. You have other planets where they've just been a name on a map and nothing else, and everything in between. And getting to just fill in those blanks over time, or getting to take a planet where there's just like a couple things here and there, and you just get to flesh that whole thing out and build centuries of history around it, build an economy and an ecology, and also put it together in a way so it provides all these gameplay opportunities. I don't know. To me, there's nothing more fun.
Yeah. Ray, how did you become the line developer?
Last man standing.
And what were you doing before that?
Well, I've been involved professionally with Battletech for 20 years this year. I started doing layout and design, as well as some fact check way back in the day before Eric put the current team together. And being such a Battletech nerd and working closely with the team back in the day, I found more and more that I had a seat at the table. There was a period of time where we didn't have a line developer. Randall Bills, the Catalyst General Manager, had the title nominally, but it was sort of left up to me to generate products and keep products flowing, even though in title I was just the guy designing the books.
Sure.
So my experience doing that, I eventually became the assistant line developer, and the position opened up in 2019 to become the line developer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just working with the IP for so long. I made connections throughout the community, adjacent companies, all the various organizations that take part in making Battletech what it is, working with the managers, the bosses, and just my experience in every aspect of the work, the writing, the editing, the fact checking, design, art, and everything. I sort of dabbled a little bit in all that. That when that finally opened up in 2019, I think I had to do it.
Yeah,
I had to do
absolutely.
it.
And like just a sort of momentous time as well,
Yeah.
as BattleTech is just exploding onto the public consciousness. Has it been exciting? So I guess this is sort of like, as fans of BattleTech, right? Y'all have all been, really in it for
Yes.
20 years or so. The new explosion of popularity. I mean, it's one of the most popular, games around now, right? Going from sort of a very lull point, 7, 12 years ago, to just everybody's talking about it, right? It's just a thing, right? Has that been exciting, overwhelming? Is there a little bit of resentment, like, where were y'all when we needed you, right? So what's the general flavor when new people are coming in? Like, has the old guard sort of embraced that, or is there?
Do you guys want to answer first?
I'd say it's been welcome back, and
Yeah.
to those of you who are new here, welcome.
Yeah.
I've heard online that the chatter that a lot of the people who have either returned or have gravitated from other popular game systems or have come here brand new, they find this to be one of the most welcoming and supportive communities. Everybody's sort of rolling out the welcome mat and trying and falling over themselves to explain all the lore. So they say, "So, tell you, what is this Draconis Combine I hear about?" And then the fire hose of
Right.
But it's been great. We've seen a lot of familiar old faces return. We've seen, in terms of the authors and producers and developers, we've seen a lot of brand new talent arrive because this is the hot new thing, and we're really happy to welcome them all. It's it's everybody has a place at the table until we blow them to pieces.
Until your place is violently removed with a mech.
Yeah, I think frankly it can't be understated either, the degree to which the combination of the two Kickstarters, the Harebrained Schemes, Battletech Inc. 2018, MechWarrior Online, and later MechWarrior 5, have really revitalized the fan base. I know, somebody started playing the game in 1999, when Facet was right about to collapse. There was a long period there when, like, if you were a Battletech player, you knew everyone else who played Battletech in your state.
Right. Yeah.
Even if you didn't know them personally, you knew who they were.
Sure.
And now I can walk into, I'm in Seattle, which is a pretty game-friendly, part of the country already, but you can just walk into a wargaming club now and, they're like, "Oh yeah, we've got Battletech games running 3x3. I'm like, "I don't know any of these."
And I don't know any of them. Yeah.
And it's incredible. As far as I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like Battletech is far and away the most popular it's ever been.
Sure.
By a pretty considerable margin. Even, at its height in the 90s, which, I wasn't around for that, but as I understand it, it was pretty big back then relative to wargaming. What it's at now is so far beyond that.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
And you notice both of our commonalities in the point of entry was computer games. MechWarrior 2, Crescent Hawk's Inception. So now we've got a great slew of computer games that have brought a ton of more people into the game.
I've met people who their first interaction with BattleTech was one of these pods. You know what I mean? That you hop in and you do a little. I mean, I guess it wasn't really like virtual reality, but like you were sort of in this pod. It was like you were in the cockpit of a mech, and like that's the only thing they knew about it, right? So.
Yeah, when I was a kid growing up in Seattle, there was a Wizards of the Coast Center in the University District. Sadly, is long gone now, but had a set of virtual pods there that were a huge factor in like getting me into the game early on.
Yeah.
I was running into it, but yeah, I get to play at the Virtual World Walnut Creek location when I was in college.
That sounds awesome.
It really was.
But yeah, I've definitely seen the phenomenon of people for whatever reason, frustrated with a game, a company, or a community and gravitate towards Battletech as an alternative, a really positive alternative to what, and I'm not, this is not to slag any other company or game, but for whatever they saw was the unhealthy thing in that community or that game, they've found Battletech to be welcoming, in that regard. So that must feel nice, as a sort of, well, I won't use the word, not gatekeepers, because that's not what you are, but you were more like the welcome wagon, right?
Yeah.
Like to bring people in, and that has seemed like a really, really positive thing.
It's actually something that we've kept in mind with our products, our fiction, our storyline, in that in the 40-year span of Battletech's history, it goes through certain waves or eras, and we've seen players sort of come and sometimes go and come back. But it's the constant reinventing that sort of leaves people behind
Mm-hmm.
as the game has progressed. And something we've actively tried to do is not only bring people back, bring in new people, but give them reasons to stay. We're not going to leave anybody behind anymore.
Yeah. And I think we feel that like online, right? Like the online communities, people are saying, to your point, like the BattleTech community seems to be one of the most welcoming, one of the most popular, and also maybe those two things are related, right?
Right. I mean, one of the problems is if you have too many factions that you're not doing stuff with some of the factions, then people who were fans of that, they get very starved for, hey, why isn't there no content for my stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of the newer products, we are making an effort to try to make sure that every faction has something cool going on, and they're not, because it used to be like, okay, so there's the Steiner Davians, there's the Kretas, there's the treacherous Liaos, and the Merrick who?
Yeah.
We don't want any faction to be who at this point.
Yeah. And I bet that feels good for anybody who was like, when they were younger, they're like, these are my people, right? Well, if those are your people and that's the ones that you decided to stick with, you're going to keep getting that content. You're going to, you're going to keep, you didn't pick the one that's going to fade away. You didn't get, left behind. That must feel really good. Is there anything, and Ray, obviously you don't have to drop anything that you aren't comfortable dropping, but is there anything that y'all are excited about, or let me just rephrase it. What are you most excited about heading into the future for Battletech? I'll let y'all answer first, and then because Ray, you've obviously got the telescope that goes the furthest. But what are y'all excited about right now for the present and the future of Battletech?
Well, I mean, we're wrapping up the introduction to the Ill Clan era. We've got 3 of the 4 opening source books out, and I guess the November release date is still on track for Ilkhan's Eyes Only, last I heard. December, okay. Well, still close.
Very close.
I've been fact-checked. Anyway, but and so that will essentially set the stage for, as a springboard for, and these are the points of entry that basically cover the entire inner sphere and set up, okay, so we now have a new paradigm. The old order has been largely shattered and things have changed. Nothing's been completely gone, but there are new borders, area worlds that had never been on front lines before are now close to all sorts of new front lines. And so areas that haven't come into conflict before are going to be now fought over, new territories. It's not just the same borders as before. And so it's a great time for people to come in and join as we springboard into a completely new era of fiction going forward. Because up until to a large extent, a lot of the last 20 years has been, there was the time jump ahead for the Dark Age, and so we already knew, okay, stuff is happening in the Dark Age, and we sort of skipped over the Jihad and then had to fill in that, and then the Republic era and the rest. And so now we're able to move fully forward into virgin territory.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, not to overlap too much with what you said, but I know, again, as somebody who, sort of comes into the game through the source books, these new plot source books that have been moving the game into the Ill Clan era have been absolutely incredible. Just some of the best stuff that the line has ever had, as far as I'm concerned. And it's never been a more fun era to play in. I don't know how often you guys get to play the actual game, but I've had a Thursday night game going for the last 16 years now. And there's just never been a more fun era to play in. There's just so many toys, so much fun technology, so many fun units that have come along through the rec guides. and there's just such a more what's the word that I'm looking for? Just such a more enjoyable faction dynamic that really just feels more alive than the game is. Not to denigrate previous eras of the game, of course, but just it's just never felt this like anything could happen.
Yeah.
Um,
So Ray is not ruining Battletech.
no.
Sorry, man.
Well, I heard on Reddit.
So I was on the internet the other day. What about you, Ray? What are you excited about?
Well, specific thing is coming out later this year. We have the BattleTech Universe book, and this book is something that we've needed in the line for a long, long time. It is the lore book. It discusses BattleTech's history from the very beginning, the creation of the faster than light drive, the KF drive, all the way to the modern era with the storyline that we're working on now, the Ill Clan era. It doesn't go into great encyclopedic detail, but it's good for either a returning player, a brand new player, or somebody that's followed along the whole 40 years. You have BattleTech's story essentially all in one book. And the addendum to that is a section detailing the extant factions, some that have been around since the very beginning, some that are practically new to the setting. And I think this is something that every BattleTech fan, old or new, whether you're a hardcore BattleTech fan or just someone casual, you should have this book.
Somebody walks in and says, "Hey, I played BattleTech. I kind of love it. How can I get the lore in as
Sure.
easy way as possible?" You say, "Here's this book."
Exactly. Or I played the latest iteration of the video game.
Mhm.
I'm not too interested in tabletop. I want some more BattleTech. This is the book.
So it's just lore,
Yes.
just a concentrated history of
Exactly.
BattleTech. That sounds awesome.
I'm super excited for that to be in everyone's hands.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we have a release date for that?
we're looking at August, September. We don't have an exact date
Of this year?
of this year.
Oh,
at
how
the end
cool.
of the year. More broadly, to what Eric and Zach said, the future work, the plot line, the storylines, the fiction, the games. For the entire time that I've been involved, the 20 years this year, we've either been constrained or dictated to or have to fill in back history. This is the first time that we are completely free to drive BattleTech in the directions that we all want to go.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, I'm at the helm, but our core of writers and developers and the community itself,
Mm-hmm.
it's all wide open to us. And I think since we are driving it, all of us, for the first time, I think this is why we're seeing such investment and renewed love for
Yeah.
it.
So like everybody who wants to get in can have their own little piece of it and do their own little thing, and it all kind of feels happening in the moment.
Yes.
Cool. That is exciting. So, when you're not doing BattleTech, or eating or sleeping or otherwise working, what do y'all do? What are y'all having fun doing? Or did I just check off all the categories that exist in your life and the question marks go like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, a lot more writing assignments have been coming down the pike for me, so I've been spending a large amount of my spare time essentially hitting those deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
I probably have the most free time of the three of us, relatively speaking. But yeah, I mean, that is a significant portion of my time. I also do a little non-BattleTech tabletop RPG stuff.
Like what?
Numenera,
Okay.
the Monty Cook game, and Eclipse Phase.
Mm-hmm. Eclipse Phase is good.
Yeah, and have a Frosthaven game that I participated in. I have a weekly gaming group that we sort of cycle through those games. over time.
Lucky.
Yeah. It's, to be honest, and I often am the GM of those games because I've found over time that I know there's sort of the perpetual problem in gaming groups of like the guy who's always the GM and never the player. I found that I'm just not a very good player. I just don't have the attention span for it. And so often I end up being the GM just because it's the thing that keeps me engaged the entire game instead of like looking at my phone or what have you. But that, and I've been I got a puppy about a year ago, and I've been raising her.
Yay.
Yeah, a lovely little corgi who Eric was kind enough to include in Clan Spaniel.
Oh, what's her name? Oh, how cute.
Tokea.
Okay.
Toki for short. She's a little corgi.
How cute.
Yeah, she's adorable.
Ray, do you have any spare time?
Not very much, no. But I really enjoy role-playing games. I don't get to play them. I like reading the mechanics and the lore behind different games. Right now, I'm in a Savage Rifts campaign, a Star Wars campaign, and I know I'm forgetting something. Oh, I don't have much time anyway. Cyberpunk.
Oh, cool.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I love role-playing games. And besides that, I just recently started to collect 1/12 scale action figures, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, and Marvel Legends.
Right on. Those are fun. I like
Yeah.
them. If I had more money, I would
Oh,
play. Well, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Any final words about anything that you want to say that's cool, that you're excited about? You've already sort of said all the Battletech stuff. But...
So one thing, if there are people out there listening to this who think, hey, I know everything about Battletech and I'd love to join the fact check team.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Basically, if you go to the Sarna website, they did an interview with me covering a lot of the same stuff, and at the bottom I gave my email address. So we have a test that aspiring fact checkers can take. And so if you're really interested in it, drop me a line, and we can set you up with the test, and you can see how you do.
Yeah, we'll see if we can't have that email dropped in the bottom
All right.
of our chat here as well.
I know it's a little further off, but can I talk about brush?
Are you asking me? You can talk about whatever
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah, I will say one of the things that I'm personally most excited for and getting to write for in the future are the eventual Brush Force source books that will be sort of deep dives into various historical conflicts that have happened throughout the settings, but which have never really gotten the sort of detailed or single source book focus that they've deserved.
Right on.
There are some existing Brush Force books which are some of my favorite books that have ever existed in the setting, and I'm really excited to see what the author pool ends up putting together with those. I think that people are going to really enjoy what we end up doing with those.
Right on.
Probably the last thing I want to say is I want to make sure to extend my thanks to these gentlemen here,
Yeah.
the rest of the staff, the fans, and the community for all the support over all the years and all the the support that we have now with this resurgence. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, gentlemen, thanks for being here. Ray Arrastia, the Battletech line developer, and Zac Schwartz, the fact checker and shrapnel writer, and Eric Salzman, the fact check lead and author. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Opti, and I'll see you guys later.
That was great. Thank you.